You know, in research and development, we're all trained to reduce uncertainty. We try to predict, to model, to control, but what happens when the future is just fundamentally unknowable? Well, today we're going to dive into a framework for navigating exactly that kind of unpredictability. The big idea here is that the most critical skill isn't just about coming up with new ideas. It's about correctly diagnosing the nature of the problem you're facing and then choosing the right way to move forward.
So this really is the core question, isn't it? When you genuinely can't know the outcome, what's the right move? I mean, our training, our gut instinct, it all tells us the same thing. Gather more data, build a better model, run a more rigorous analysis. But that whole approach, it has its limits. What if the problem you're facing isn't a lack of data, but something else entirely?
And that brings us to the biggest mistake most of us make. We have this habit of lumping every kind of not knowing into one giant bucket that we just label uncertainty. And that, right there, is a huge mistake. Because as we're about to see, different kinds of unknowability demand completely different responses. If you get the diagnosis wrong, you're going to apply the wrong cure. And that means wasted time, wasted resources, and projects that just stall out. All right, so to fix this, we have to shift our focus. This first part is all about taking a crucial first step, diagnosing the challenge you're up against before you even think about jumping to solutions. The problem itself, not the technology, not the resources, that has to be our starting point. Take a look at this breakdown of the problem-solving process. It's really revealing. Most of us, and I mean especially those of us with technical backgrounds, are trained to jump straight to step 2, solving the problem. That's the fun part, right? But the real leverage, the place where innovation is either born or dies, is all in step 1, how we find, frame, and formulate the problem. Get this part wrong, and honestly, even the most brilliant solution in the world is doomed to fail.
So, let's open up the diagnostic toolkit. If not all unknowability is the same, then what are the different types? This framework gives us a much more precise language for those moments when we feel like we're just operating in the dark.
Here they are, the 5 distinct knowledge problems. First up, you've got risk. This is familiar territory. We know the possible outcomes, and we can estimate the odds, kind of like rolling a pair of dice. Then there's ambiguity. We might have data, but it's really not clear what story it's telling. Third is complexity. Think of a tangled web. There are just too many interconnected variables to track. Fourth is equivocality. This is when different people, maybe 2 different teams, look at the very same information and draw completely conflicting but equally valid conclusions. And finally, there's true uncertainty. This is when we don't even know what all the possible outcomes are. Each one of these needs a totally different game plan. And this slide really helps make it all concrete. It's about how these problems actually feel in the real world. Imagine a project manager saying, "We have a ton of data, but we just can't tell what story it's telling." See, that's ambiguity. Throwing more data at it won't help. Or how about this one? 2 teams are drawing opposite conclusions from the same report. That's equivocality. A better analytical model isn't going to solve a fundamental disagreement in interpretation. The key is to start recognizing these patterns in your own work.
Okay, so now that we have a way to diagnose the problem, let's talk about the solution. And this brings us to a really fascinating, scientifically grounded logic of action called effectuation. Now, this isn't just some startup buzzword. It's a rigorous way of acting when you simply can't predict the future. And what's so cool about this is that effectuation wasn't just invented, it was discovered. A researcher named Saras Sarasvathy studied a group of expert entrepreneurs. She found they all shared this common logic for making decisions, a logic that was fundamentally different from the standard predict and plan model we're all taught. She named it effectuation. And the best part? Because these experts learned it through experience, it means it can also be taught.
This slide just lays out the difference perfectly. On the left, you've got causal logic. It's great for stable, predictable worlds. You start with a goal, and then you try to find the best way to get there. But on the right is effectual logic. Just look at the motto. If I can control the future, I don't need to predict it. It's a total flip. It starts with what you have right now, focuses on what you can afford to lose, and it sees the future as something you create through your actions, not something you just predict.
Okay, so that all sounds great in theory, but how do you actually do this? Well, effectuation can be broken down into 4 really practical, learnable principles that you can start applying to your own work, even inside a big organization.
The first principle is called bird in hand. It's simple. Don't start with some grand vision out there in the future. Start right here with what you have, who you are, what you know, and who you know. Think about Earl Bakken at Medtronic. The pacemaker didn't come from some big market forecast. No, it came from his deep, hands-on knowledge that he got from years of repairing medical equipment. That was his means. He started with what he had. Second is affordable loss. And this one completely flips the script on how we think about investment. Instead of asking about the potential upside or the expected return, you ask a different question. What is the smallest, smartest bet we can make right now to learn something valuable? The comparison here is just staggering. Right now, technology's made a tiny $5,000 bet just to learn something, and it grew into a billion-dollar company. Zaplet made a massive $90 million bet because they were sure they were right from the start, and it completely failed. Principle 3 is the crazy quilt. Think about making a quilt. Instead of trying to design the whole thing up front and then finding the perfect pieces, you start with one piece and invite others to add their own. The key here is that partners self-select by committing real resources, their time, their expertise, their connections. Each new partner doesn't just add to the project, they literally help redefine what the project can become. You're building a coalition of the willing, not just executing a pre-baked plan. And finally, we have the lemonade principle. You know, making lemonade out of lemons. This is all about how you treat surprises. In a predictable, causal world, surprises are problems. They're noise you want to get rid of. But in an effectual world, surprises are valuable signals. They're new information. I mean, the classic example is Spencer Silver's failed adhesive at 3M. It wasn't strong enough. It wasn't a failure, though. It was an unexpected input that, when someone else leveraged it, became the post-it note. So let's bring these two big ideas together. On one hand, you've got this diagnostic toolkit to figure out exactly what kind of unknowability you're facing. And on the other hand, you have the principles of effectuation for how to act when you're in the fog of true uncertainty. Put them together, and you get a really powerful new framework for making decisions. And this slide right here, this is the master framework. It ties everything together. You start on the left by diagnosing the knowledge problem. If you're dealing with risk, ambiguity, or complexity, your traditional, predictive, causal logic is the right tool for the job. But when you hit equivocality or true uncertainty, you have to switch your logic. You move from a logic of prediction to a logic of control. And the fundamental question you ask yourself shifts from what are the odds to what can we make happen?
So if you're going to take away just a few things from all this, make it these. First, always diagnose before you act. Put a name to the knowledge problem you're actually facing. Second, remember that effectuation is not about being reckless. It is a highly rigorous way to create progress when prediction is literally impossible. And third, your own context is your biggest asset. Your unique knowledge, your lab, your network, use them. Start there. I want to leave you with this final thought because it just perfectly captures the spirit of this whole approach. Effectuation is not about abandoning rigor. It's about applying rigor to what you can actually control, not to what you can't predict. It's a different kind of rigor, one that empowers you to act. So the question to ask yourself is, what's the one small, effectual move you could make this week?